When she woke up with a splitting headache, Woshu found herself lying on a strange large bed, wrapped in cool soft silk bedding, with a faint cedar scent lingering in her nose. Unfamiliar but not pungent. She blinked her sleepy eyes and slowly glanced around the minimalist, cool, minus-tone decoration, the black, white and gray color scheme. The huge room was empty and somewhat cold. There were no dolls, no decorative paintings, not even a trace of life. It was not as gaudy as a hotel, but more distant and exquisite than an ordinary apartment. Fragments of memories from last night surged like a tide. The department dinner, colleagues toasting her, one after another, at the celebration banquet. She was never good at holding alcohol, and couldn't resist the enthusiasm of her colleagues. So she accidentally drank a few more glasses. In the end, she was dizzy and couldn't even walk steadily. Later, someone seemed to help her, with a cool scent. After that everything was blurred, leaving only the man's heavy groans and the rustling sound of clothes rubbing, like a vine of death, still lingering in her ears, making her whole body hot and her cheeks burn instantly. She sat up suddenly, her mind clearing instantly. She looked down at herself in panic. She was completely naked, with fine red marks left on her skin. Shocking to the eye, she quickly pulled the quilt around herself, her eyes scanning the ground in confusion. She saw a torn white shirt scattered on the carpet, its collar torn, several buttons missing, and faint wine stains and a faint cedar scent on the fabric. This was the shirt she wore last night, and now it was in a mess, completely unwearable. She stretched out her hand, trembling lie through the torn shirt on the ground randomly, and the rough touch of the fabric still remained on her fingertips. Her heart was beating so fast that it was almost jumping out of her chest. She just wanted to escape this place of right and wrong as soon as possible, pretending that nothing had happened last night. But at that moment she glanced at the sofa beside the bed, where a set of clean clothes was neatly folded, a white silk camisole, a black hip minus hugging suit skirt, and a pair of low minus heel black leather shoes. The style was simple and capable, obviously prepared for her. It was probably casually bought by that unfamiliar man to deal with the situation, but it fit unexpectedly well. She didn't have time to think more, hurried to the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and finally suppressed the panic and heat in her heart. She quickly washed up, put on the professional suit skirt, and looked at herself in the mirror. The size of the skirt was just right, outlining her slender waist in beautiful curves. But when she unbuttoned the two buttons of the collar, she couldn't help gasping below her collarbone. It was a mess, with dense red marks spreading from the collarbone to the chest, as if marked carefully by someone. She smiled minus deprecating lie, her eyes full of helplessness and embarrassment. Should I praise this man for being a gentleman? He was afraid of being seen by others, so he deliberately left all the marks where the clothes could cover them, as if the entanglement last night was just her illusion. He only wanted to finish and cut off the relationship, leaving no trace. He adjusted her collar, hiding all the marks, took a deep breath, pushed open the bathroom door and walked out. Looking around the room again, it was still so cold. A glass of cold water was placed on the bedside table. Other than that, there was no other sign of a living person. She pulled her bag from the bedside, and when her fingertips touched the bag, she remembered that her mobile phone was still in the bag. She quickly took it out and checked. No missed calls, no messages. It seemed that her colleagues thought she stayed at a friend's house last night. Shu clenched her mobile phone, tiptoed to the door, and carefully opened a crack. The light outside poured in instantly, making her squint her eyes subconsciously. It turned out that this was not a hotel. Outside the door was a huge living room, decorated in the same style as the room, cool and minimalist, with a leather sofa, and the bustling city night view outside the floor minus to minus ceiling windows. Obviously it was a high-end apartment. Just as she was about to slip out quietly, a familiar figure broke into her sight. The man was wearing black headphones, sitting on the sofa with his legs crossed, a gray pillow on his lap, and a silver laptop on it. He was wearing a black home suit, his collar slightly open, revealing a smooth collarbone. The whole person exuded a lazy and distant temperament, completely different from his cold appearance in the company. Hearing the movement in the room, the man slowly raised his head. His deep eyes fell on her. His dark eyes were like a cold pool, bottomless, but with a hint of imperceptible heat. Woshu froze completely. Her pupils shrank suddenly, and the color on her face faded instantly. This man was actually her boss, Yuzan. Yuzan was a legend in the fashion industry. He took charge of the multi-billion-dollar group at a young age with sharp methods and a cold personality. He was a famous, ascetic tycoon. Rumor had it that he was not close to women, had a severe cleanliness habit, and no woman had ever appeared by his side. But judging from his state last night, his desire was not suppressed at all. Instead, he was like a wolf that had been hungry for decades. The heat and loss of control in his eyes still lingered in her mind. Luo Shu was dumbfounded, her lips moved, wanting to say something. To apologize, to explain, but when the words came to her mouth, she couldn't say a single word. At that moment, Yuzon spoke before her, his voice low and deep, with a hint of tiredness from the meeting. It's still cold time in a meeting. Owoshu came to her senses instantly, her cheeks burning again. She quickly lowered her head, dared not look at him again, and knew what he meant. Don't make a sound. Don't disturb him. She stood stiffly in place, her hands tightly clutching the strap of her bag, her fingertips turning white. Her heart beating so fast that she was afraid of accidentally making a sound and arousing his dissatisfaction. After a few minutes, Yuzon finished a part of the meeting, leaned forward slightly, and gently pushed a glass of honey water in front of him with his slender fingers, pushing it to the other breakfast on the table. His tone was still flat, but with an undeniable meaning. Come here and eat breakfast. His movements were natural and smooth, without any embarrassment because of the entanglement last night. But he didn't notice that when he leaned forward. The faint shred marks on his neck just hit the computer camera, clearly seen by several company executives on the other side of the screen. Woshu stood in place, seeing clearly, her face turning red with nervousness, and she groaned secretly in her heart. Those marks were probably left by her last night. She didn't expect her sucking skill to be so powerful that she left marks on this ascetic tycoon's neck. She wished she could find a crack to crawl into. She really hoped that this was an ordinary hotel, where she could go her separate ways after going out, never see him again, and never face this embarrassment. But things didn't go as she wished. She had to bite the bullet and walk step by step to the sofa. Sitting down trembling her eyes wandered, dare not look into Yuzon's eyes. She could only obediently pick up the glass of honey water, drink it in small sips, and then pick up the same sandwich as is on the table, chewing mechanically, tasteless. Yuzon was famous for being cold. Cold in character, cold in temper, and exuding a sense of distance that kept strangers away. In the company, no one dared to say a word more to him, let alone offend him. Well, Woshu knew in her heart that she had probably kicked the iron plate this time. She must have drunk too much last night and got into the wrong car, which led to such an absurd thing with her boss. It's okay to get into the wrong car, but how could this cold-face boss not recognize her? He clearly knew that she was his employee, but he still had a relationship with her. Was he not afraid of affecting his reputation? Woshu thought wildly while eating breakfast quickly, just wanting to finish eating and leave this place that made her feel uncomfortable all over. 15 minutes later, Yuzon finished the entire meeting, turned off the computer, took off his headphones, and then slowly picked up the sandwich on the table and ate it. He ate quickly, but still maintained an elegant posture, not looking at Woshu at all, as if she beside him was just a transparent person. Just as Woshu thought he would remain silent all the time, Yuzon suddenly spoke. His tone was still cold, the same as when he made decisions in the company. There was no expression on his face, as if he was talking about an insignificant matter. Sorry, I didn't know it was your first time. I was a bit too rough. The milk that Woshu had just drunk into her mouth was suddenly choked out, and she coughed violently. The mentality she had just adjusted collapsed instantly, and the blush on her face spread again, even her ears turned red. She lowered her head in embarrassment, complaining secretly in her heart. It's over once it's over. Can we stop recalling it? Can we stop mentioning it? Yuzan raised his eyes to look at her. A hint of imperceptible panic flashed in his eyes. He reached out and handed her a tissue. His tone still flat. The family doctor will be here soon. You can go back later. Woshu took the tissue and wiped the corner of her mouth. Her heart skipped a beat suddenly. Good guy. This is killing her right after getting in the car. He was afraid that she would be pregnant with his child, afraid that she would pester him, and wanted to do a check minus up quickly to cut off all future troubles. Did he think she would covet his money, want to rely on the child to get a position, and inherit his throne? Woshu complained in her heart, but did not dare to say it out loud. She could only nod silently and continue drinking the milk in the cup. Yuzan ate very quickly and finished soon. He leaned on the sofa, crossed his hands on his chest, and his eyes fell on Woshu, his tone still flat. Wait here. I have to go to the company today. I let Shenyan send you back. Woshu quickly put down the milk cup and stopped him in a panic. With a hint of panic and imperceptible resistance in her tone, Mr. Yu. No need. I can go back by myself. It won't trouble you and Assistant Shen. She just wanted to escape quickly, not to have any more involvement with him, let alone let Shenyan know about this matter. Otherwise she really couldn't stand in the company in the future. Yuzon raised his eyes slightly, his deep eyes locked on her tightly. A hint of grievance flashed in his eyes, and his tone was with a hint of imperceptible teasing. Are you blaming me for not performing well last night? Huh? Woshu raised her head suddenly, full of shock, her eyes wide open, her heart beating wildly, almost jumping out of her chest. How dare she blame him? He was the boss, and she was the employee. Not to mention blaming him. Even if she had more dissatisfaction in her heart, she could only swallow it. Woshu was lost for words. She opened her mouth, but couldn't say a single word, not knowing how to refute his words. Since she was a child, it was the first time she was crushed in words, and it was by her own boss. If it were someone else, she would have turned her face and torn the other person's mouth, but facing Yuzan, she could only swallow her anger and not even dare to refute. At that moment, an older aunt walked over with a glass of warm water and said respectfully, Mr. Yu, Nana's here. Yuzan nodded, did not speak, just looked at Woshu quietly, with a hint of complex emotions in his deep eyes, guilt, heat, and a hint of imperceptible tenderness. Woshu felt uncomfortable being stared at by him. Her already red cheeks became even hotter, and her whole body started to burn. She was already beautiful, with white and tender skin like a peeled egg, and a head of naturally golden hair that was soft and fluffy, making her facial features more delicate and three-dimensional. As a mixed race, she had a hint of exotic charm in her eyebrows and eyes, extremely beautiful. In addition, she had an outstanding figure, curvy, which just hit everyone's expectation of an ideal girlfriend. Come with me. Yuzan stood up first, turned towards the bedroom, and let out a faint, imperceptibly when he left, with a hint of helplessness in his eyes. Woshu followed him obediently, secretly regretting in her heart who let her drink too much last night and provoke the tycoon in the fashion industry. Now she can only be at his mercy. Walking into the bedroom last night again, Woshu felt lingering fear. Her eyes subconsciously fell on the bed, and cold sweat broke out in her palms. However, this battlefield had already been cleaned up by the maid just now. The sheets and quilt covers were all changed to new ones, and there was no trace of the entanglement last night, as if everything last night was just her nightmare. A female doctor in a white coat walked in, holding a medical kit in her hand, with a gentle smile on her face. Yuzan glanced at Woshu, did not say much, turned around and walked out of the bedroom, and gently closed the door, giving her enough privacy. Woshu was a little surprised. She originally thought that Yuzan would stay, or let the maid stay by her side, but she didn't expect him to be so considerate. She also thought that the female doctor was here to give her birth control pills, or an injection to prevent pregnancy, but she didn't expect that the female doctor only gave her a simple check-up and then applied some ointment to relieve the swelling and redness. Even though the female doctor was the same sex, Woshu still felt extremely ashamed. She covered her face with her hands the whole time, wanting to find a crack to crawl into, feeling that her face was completely lost. She could clearly feel the coolness of the ointment. When applied to the skin, the burning pain was indeed relieved a lot, but the embarrassment in her heart did not decrease at all. After the check-up, Woshu tidied up her clothes and walked out of the bedroom. She found that Yuzan was no longer in the living room, only Shenyan was standing at the door, holding the car keys with a playful smile on his face. Shenyan was the same age as her, both 20-2 years old. Graduated from the same university, interviewed and joined the company at the same time. But in different positions, Shenyan was the only assistant by Yuzan's side, and also his most capable right-hand man. Usually in the company, the two had a good relationship. Woshu stood beside the car, looking at Shenyan with a playful smile in the driver's seat, her cheeks burning again, feeling that her face was lost all over the place and couldn't be picked up. She opened the car door, sat in the passenger seat, stared tightly at the car window glass, and asked in a voice as low as a mosquito, "Shenyan, last night, did I get in the wrong car?" Shenyan started the car, turned his head to look at her. The smile on his face became stronger, and deliberately teased. "Yes, future Mrs. Yu." Seeing that Woshu's face was reddened, she was about to get angry. Shenyan restrained himself a little, and began to describe the scene last night vividly. "I've known you for so long, and this is the first time I've seen you drink so much. You got in the wrong car last night. As soon as you got in the car, you hugged the boss, called him Big White again and again, and suddenly leaned over to kiss him. You were really fierce." Woshu hung her head, covered her face with her hands, and imagined the scene last night while listening, wanting to die on the spot. Shenyan continued. "The boss also drank some wine last night, but he didn't dare to move at first. You know, the boss has a severe cleanliness habit, but you just tore his shirt. Several buttons fell off, and you still held him tightly." Oh. Woshu couldn't say a word. She could only let Shenyan tease her, secretly regretting drinking so much last night and doing such an absurd thing. Seeing her look of despair, Shenyan couldn't help laughing, and his tones softened a little. "I originally wanted to send you back, but considering that you live alone, the boss was afraid that you would feel uncomfortable when you woke up, and also afraid that you couldn't handle it yourself. So he brought you back to his house." Woshu squeezed a smile uglier than crying, pulled the corner of her mouth, and let out a dry "heh." She didn't believe that Yuzan was so kind. He probably just was afraid that something would happen to her and affect his reputation. Shenyan turned his head to look at her, glanced at her up and down, with a hint of playfulness in his eyes. "So, you and the boss." His eyes fell on Woshu's neck, and a hint of confusion flashed in his eyes. "Unfortunately, Yuzan was seated. There was not a single mark left on his neck, as clean as ever." Woshu touched her neck along his gaze, smiled hopelessly, pointed to her clean collar and said flatly, "As you can see, nothing special." Shenyan raised his eyebrows, teasing, "It seems that the boss is too much of a gentleman to leave any marks on you." Woshu didn't speak, just turned her head to look at the scenery passing by quickly outside the window, her heart mixed with emotions. She didn't know that this unexpected entanglement would completely change the relationship between her and Yuzan, nor did she know what kind of unknown tenderness was hidden under the cold shell of this ascetic tycoon. What's more, she didn't know that from the moment she hugged Yuzan and called him Big White last night, the cold and distant man's heart had already rippled for her.